Hi guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, a MitchRapp podcast. So what are you up to this week, Mike?
Not much. It's the end of term 2 at school. So I'm like, wow, half a school year, all virtual. Never would have thought that would happen. But yeah, things are coming along. How's it going over there at the Furman household?
Pretty good, pretty good. Baby's 2 weeks old now.
All right.
So getting some sleep. Went back to my job on Monday. That was good.
Oh, okay.
So congrats for making it through halfway the virtual year. Are you going to go back at all this year?
Well, schools are doing limited reopenings, term 3. I was not selected to go back yet. We'll see by term 4 what happens. If the demand increases, a lot of parents actually opted out, even though they were offered a slot. And
Gotcha.
we under-enrolled because of that, and they didn't need all the teachers. So we'll see if that changes as the vaccine rolls out and what happens. But yeah, kind of crazy, unprecedented.
Let's hope. Here's to the vaccine. You should be getting yours soon, and I'll be getting mine in the next month.
Yes.
So.
And that's through NIH in the new job.
Yeah, they're in like almost to phase 2 with their vaccine, so they're gonna try to vaccine all of us. So, anyways.
All right, good. Well, I'm excited for what we're doing today.
Yes, I am too.
We got to kick it off with our giveaway. It's February 1st. So I've got my copy of Consent to Kill, autographed by Vince Flynn. Rare copy. Thankfully, I have 2, willing to give one away to you all, the listeners.
How gracious.
So, yeah, everyone who registered and confirmed their subscription on our No Limits email newsletter updates, one of you guys is going to win this copy. So, Chris, I got the list here. Give me a number 1 through 3.
1 through 3. 2.
2. Okay. I'm going to the second page. Now give me a number 1 through 25.
14.
I'm going to count down 14, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Lee Bergley, Lee S. Bergley at gmail.com. You are our winner of the MitchRappPod Consent to Kill giveaway.
Congratulations.
All right. We'll be reaching out to you and getting your book in the mail, hopefully in the next week.
Congrats.
All right.
So, for February, we did a giveaway to anyone. Sorry, for January, we did a giveaway to anyone. But for February, it's going to be back to our Patreons only. So if you're interested, please go and visit MitchRappPod.com. Click that little orange support button for Patreon, and you'll be entered into the February giveaway. Are we doing a pick your own again?
Yeah, we have a couple of other autographed Vince Flynn books, and we'll have a couple of titles you can choose from if you're the winner.
Right. And so by becoming a patron, you will receive a MitchRappPod sticker and a reading list bookmark, along with entries into our monthly giveaways, as well as a code if you want to use it to buy some MitchRappPod swag. My dad loves his t-shirt, his hoodie, gave it to him for his birthday. He loves it. Very comfortable. So you get a coupon code for 25% off at the Teespring store. And also, this year we are partnering with Operation Paperback. So by becoming a Patreon, you'll be helping us support Operation Paperback in order to send those care packages of Vince Flynn or other thriller books to the troops and veterans. And yeah, it's your financial contribution that not only helps us do that, but keeps us going as a pod. So yeah, we thank you.
Yeah, just today, I actually put together our
nice.
2 care packages. I'll be putting them in the mail. 10 thriller books each, most of those Vince Flynn, MitchRapp thrillers. And they'll be going to 2 units to share and distribute, currently deployed. Listener shout out on that end, Garrett. Thanks, Garrett. Garrett reached out and sent us one of his extra rap books. It was The Survivor. So that is going to be in one of the care packages that we're sending out. So If you too would like to support our efforts, either become a patron at MitchRappPod.com and click support us on Patreon, or reach out directly by email, MitchRappPod@gmail.com. And we'd be happy to take your leftover books and get them in the hands of our troops.
That'd be great, yeah.
All right.
All right, so one more thing before we get into today's podcast. Mike, we have to talk about hashtag Rap20 update, okay? So they're released on the Twitter sphere, and I didn't see it on Instagram, but also on Facebook, this title reveal game where every day, starting on the 28th, they released a single question about the 19 previous rap books. And from that question, you could guess a title, and then they gave you like whatever word in that title was going to be the next clue, right? And so that would give you 4 keywords in order to track down the title. So it's called a track down the title game, right? So we waited to record this little bit of the podcast until we got all 4 clues. We're not going to spoil it right now. However, we do want to tell you all 4 of the clues in case you haven't had a chance to, find them. If you want to go and watch, it's pretty cool. They got MitchRapp ambassadors to read them out on Twitter and vinceflynn.com. So you can go there and check that out. But here we're going to read them here for you. And then next week, we're going to do a deep dive discussion both into the answers of these clues as well as tracking down that title, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you missed it, they're all on vinceflynn.com in addition to the social media platforms that Chris described. And as you give them to us, Chris, I will give a special shout out to the MitchRapp ambassadors who read each clue. So what was clue number 1?
All right, so clue number 1 was, what novel did Rap eat pizza and drink Coke while visiting his dilapidated and exploded house that he used to share with Anna? And so in that title, the first word was your keyword, and that was read by...
And that was read by Stephen A. You can find him on Twitter at MICH Escobar09.
Nice. And so day 2 was, what rap book shares a title with one written by the author of Frankenstein? So in that title, the second word is your keyword, and that was read by...
That was Bridget Brooks. You can find her on Twitter at Bridget, BRIDGETA, Brooks, BROOKS.
Nice. Clue 3 was, what book does MitchRapp use a bone to pick a lock?
That clue, let's find it here on the Twitter. Drake, that was Drake DW. Guess where you can find him on Twitter? At Drake DW. He doesn't look like Drake, though, the other Drake.
No, he doesn't.
Not too much resemblance.
And that title, it was the first word. And then the fourth clue was, in what book does Rap adopt his dog Shirley? And that was the third word, I believe.
Yeah, the third word in that title is your fourth and final keyword for guessing Rap 20. And that was by Desiree at Desiree, 2 E's, Holt, HOLT on Twitter, for awesome MitchRapp ambassadors.
All right, so do you guys know the answer to those clues? If you do, you can figure out the key phrase and find the title.
There's a twist. I'm just going to throw it out there. I thought, and everyone else thought, the 4 words was going to be the title of Rap 20.
Me too.
But just a warning, there's a twist at the end. The 4 words are only your keywords to point you in the direction of the actual Rap 20 title. And the last twist, we also get a publication date once you figure out the clues and a summary of the book plot. And dude, I cannot wait to talk to you about that awesome summary next week.
Yes, so next week we'll break down this more, talk about these as well as the title. So until then, we hope you enjoy the rest of this podcast.
All right, well, we're really excited to give you a discussion. We're nearing the halfway point of all rap books. We've read 9 books that we've reviewed on the pod. And we want to revisit our whole scoring, rating, and ranking system. We maybe in the beginning didn't have a sense of how we were going to shape up with our rankings. And now that we have quite a few books under our belt, I think it's a good time to have a conversation about what we liked, what is higher up our list, what cracks our top 5. Because it's been really hard giving you a number on each of these books at the very end. It's all relative, right?
Yeah, and some of you may be wondering, why aren't we waiting until we actually get halfway through? But I would argue that 1, it's our podcast, so we can do what we want. 2,
That's awesome.
The real reason is I think Consent to Kill is a good place to do this because of how it sort of signals this transition. And then we're going to get into a couple books that are very different in tone, very different rap. So we both felt that this was a good time to do it, right?
Yeah, you're right. Consent to Kill definitely is a turning point in the series and Rap's life. So great time to do it. But here's the thing, right? They're all a 10 out of 10.
Yes.
And some of my favorite thrillers on, Goodreads or Amazon, 5 stars every time. Recommend them to people, recommend them to friends.
Definitely.
Totally pumped. But our mission here is to really dig in. It is to get a little nitpicky, not to, bring down the books or to, tarnish their reputation, but it'd be boring if, we were just cheerleaders each time for everything and we didn't really analyze and dig into how the writing, and particularly Vince's writing, is flowing and growing and kind of he's tinkering with things.
We are cheerleaders because we created this pod. We love this stuff. So
we love them. Yeah. And then I also thought back into the beginning and I kind of started by rating a little harder.
Yes, we both
kind of in my mind. I was like, we're going to get to Memorial Day. We're going to get to Transfer. Well, Transfer was second, but we're going to get to Consent and we're going to get to American Assassin. So, I started out with Term Limits and Third Option, and I realized I was a little harsh on them when we covered them, just because in my mind I had this idea of we're going to grow. But looking back on them, I'm very fond for those books, right?
Yes.
If I gave something a 7 out of 10, it was not saying I don't think it's a great book. I would recommend it to a friend as a 10 out of 10. You got to read this, particularly Term Limits, looking back at it, and as a first novel. But we really were trying to read it with a critical eye. So
right.
Really didn't mean to intend any harm or malice in a low score in the past. And today hope to kind of, recognize that and re-rank everything and give it new ratings and see what we think now, looking at the series with a wider scope.
Yeah, and if you don't agree with us, send all your hate mail to our Twitter account because Martini covers that one. And if you do agree with us, hit me on Instagram. No, I'm just kidding. So you actually brought this up to me. There are series where people dissect them, like Harry Potter or Star Wars or Marvel and Lord of the Rings. And there's podcasts where they have, obviously you have to rank stuff. That's an easy podcast subject to do, and it's
like
fun.
Star Wars.
It's fun to do.
Everyone makes a list of best Star Wars.
In there's actually bad Star Wars, but
that is true.
But
that's the difference here. They're actually bad.
Like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. I don't think there are weaker Harry Potter books. All of them are great though.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's what
I think here. Harry Potter, to me, is probably the closest in a series in terms of you like it all. If you're a fan, you enjoy it all. Mm-hmm. And you think there are slight gradations in which ones are better or worse. But you would never call one of them bad. And that's what it's like with Vince Flynn for me.
Or what, I love all Marvel movies. I think they're all entertaining. But is Thor Dark World amazing? No. Yeah. But it's still very entertaining, and I rewatch it. So it's
just because it's at the bottom of your Marvel movies list doesn't mean you didn't enjoy it. You weren't a fanboy when it came out.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
I guess you're right. It is different than Star Wars in that sense because I did walk out of a couple of those, just prequel and sequel. Just saying that was garbage.
There are some Star Wars movies that people really don't like. Really don't like.
So did we just scientifically prove that Mitch Rapp is more like Harry Potter and the Avengers than Star Wars?
You could say that.
I think so.
Okay. Okay. So
That's probably not true at all in terms of actual characters and storylines, but
yeah, no, he's definitely more like Luke. But anyways,
all right. Well, let's get into some categories. What do you want to start out of here? Just doing our rankings?
I think we should go with our books covered. And so I kindly took from all of our notes from our episodes, I put both mine and yours and ratings into a list from best to worst. And I want to just discuss those quickly, one for you, one for me. And then I think now when I put them all together, I want an opportunity, and maybe you want an opportunity to make some changes, because there's definitely some changes I want to make.
Okay.
And maybe we can come to consensus, or discuss why we think each of the ones. But I think that would be a good way to start.
Let's do it. So we both put Memorial Day as our highest ranking when we covered it, and I think we're both keeping it so far as our highest ranking of what we covered.
Yes.
You're with me on that? Okay.
I'm with you on that.
What do you say is second then?
We both said in the pod, based on what we said in the pod, that our earlier episodes, that Consent to Kill was ranked higher. I'm keeping that as the Memorial Day and then Consent to Kill.
I think Consent to Kill is the better book, but I bumped up Transfer of Power. I think I'm putting that as my second. I think it has more nostalgia for me. I think as an introduction to rap, meeting him for the first time just sticks with you on every reread. And hitting the White House, man, that's such a big story. And we had a great villain. We're going to talk a little later about it, but Aziz, some of the things that happen in that one are really memorable in a nostalgic way for me. I'm going to put that one second, though I don't disagree with you. Consent to Kill is probably the better written book and better story. So I get that you're keeping that as your second. Makes sense.
Okay. All right. And then, so for number 3 for me, a little bit of a hot take, I feel like, but I ranked it in the pods, Lethal Agent, as the third highest book, based on the ones we've done so far. I honestly think this is going to change. This is definitely going to change once we have other ones in there. American Assassin and Killshot, just for an examples, are going to go above Lethal Agent. But for right now, with the books we have, I really enjoyed Lethal Agent, so I'm sticking. And again, I'm sticking. My top 3 are not changing.
Okay, so that's still your third of what we've covered.
Yes, and
I loved Lethal Agent.
You had it ranked third based on the scores we gave.
I did, and I still love it. I had it third on the scores that we gave, but I did drop it to my 5th place spot. I had to move up Consent to Kill, as we know. And then I also, maybe the nostalgia factor is getting to me as we think back, but Term Limits. I jumped Term Limits up into my 4th spot.
Big mover.
Above Lethal Agent. Yeah, that one really grew. Just thinking, I've had so many conversations with people about, this book Term Limits, it is so apt for today's world. And then like Scott Coleman and where he's come, and the role of Stansfield in that book, and Term Limits grew on me, fond memories of it. And for a first book, it was a lot of fun. A lot of it was in DC, that helicopter scene and some other like spycraft scenes. So I bumped up Term Limits to my 4th place, and for that reason, Lethal Agent is down to 5th. But Lethal Agent still, I think, is probably going to hold down close to top 5 on my overall favorites anyway. So 5, 6, 7th spot. I think it's going to stay around there. Love that one.
Gotcha. So for my 4th spot, I had what you had moved up to your second, Transfer of Power. And it's staying there. So I don't have anything changed for my top 5, which for 5 I did Total Power. So yeah, I love Transfer of Power. Like you said, I think Transfer of Power is going to stay there right underneath Lethal Agent. So that means it'd be interesting once we add in the other ones and we sort of revisit these in, a couple months whenever we finish the series. But yeah, for right now, I have Lethal Agent above Total Power. And unlike you, I love Total Power. I thought it was really unique, interesting, different. I'm right in the people's wave. So Total Power, number 5.
All right. because I put Total Power slightly lower on this list, I bumped up Separation of Power. When we rated it, I gave it an 8.9. That's probably about where I'm going to keep it.
Right.
I mean, Separation Power had some really cool stuff. A Milan scene with Donatella. Donatella plays a central role. And also Rapp doing something really badass, dropping in these this motorcade, impersonating Saddam Hussein's son to recover nukes in the middle of Baghdad. So Separation of Power jumped a little bit ahead of Total Power for me, but that's just where I'm at. You're about there with Separation of Power too, right?
Yeah, so my initially next for 6, I ranked Separation of Power, Executive Power, and then the third option, and I was really harsh on Term Limits based on our initial thing. I was really harsh on Term Limits, gave it a 7. So I'm actually deciding to change up these bottom 4, and I'm going to go the third option, Separation of Power, Term Limits, and Executive Power. I think we both agree that Executive Power is at the bottom of our rankings, and it'll probably just continue to fall as we read more and more of these. Although I don't remember some of the books we're about to cover. I don't quite remember the plots as much. I probably will remember them as soon as we read it, but
yeah. And like we said on the pod where we covered it, it's a shame Executive Power drops down the list because we loved parts of it so much.
Right. That's
like the Filipino jungle scenes, Rapp getting shot, a wicker operating in the jungle, the beach scenes, right, where they're pretty much storming the beach, and one of those they get slaughtered, and another one they successfully do it. A lot of good stuff there, but the second half of that book is the reason we're keeping it there.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so recap. Chris, currently out of the books we've done, what are your top 5 in order? And then I'll give my top 5 in order.
Okay.
So far.
Top 5 for me is Memorial Day, Consent to Kill, Lethal Agent, Transfer of Power, and Total Power.
All right, mine are Memorial Day, Transfer of Power, Consent to Kill, Term Limits, and Lethal Agent.
I think my top 5 are going to change drastically because those are the only 2 Kyle books we've read.
That's true.
And so I feel like I wanted to have him represented in there, but I think I definitely like Lethal Agent out of all the Kyle books, but I think I like some of the other Kyle books better than Total Power. So Total Power is probably going to drop.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, well, we'll bring you a re-ranking later on in our MitchRappPod series, maybe when we're approaching the end, and then certainly at the very end of this project. So stay tuned.
And I'll post these both of our lists on our social media on Monday when this pod drops, so you guys can either agree or probably disagree.
Tear us to shreds.
But no, we love to hear what your personal rankings are.
Yes, we do. Well, I'm excited how we're going to spend the second half of the pod here doing some superlatives.
Yes.
We brainstormed some categories that we thought would be interesting just to go through and think in the different books what are some of the coolest, most enjoyable elements of these stories. And I think we've got a good list of topics to cover. How about you tell us, Chris, what superlatives we're going to walk through here?
Yes, I've been asking you actually to do these since, I don't know, book 2.
That's true.
I was like, we got to do this. Martini's like, yes. Once we start covering more of them on the pod,
we got to read at least a chunk of books before we can do superlatives.
Especially the first one we're going to do is best villain, because I just remember that obviously you remember the villain the most from all these books. And I was like, I just want to talk about all of them. So
the best big bad.
Yes, we're going to cover the best villain. We're going to cover the best action scene, best Rapp kill, best B plot. We love our B plot, typically political. Best book location or place that Mitch goes, setting. And then, of course, we always talk about our titles and we talk about our covers. So we're going to go best title and best cover.
All right, let's do it.
All right, what do you want to start with?
You kicked us off with best villain, so let's just
let's do this.
Let's keep that ball rolling. We've got Transfer of Power. Rafiq Aziz is a classic.
Yes.
To me, he stands out just that creepy eeriness, and knowing it was written pre 9/11, like I don't think America necessarily had a general understanding of the psychology of fundamentalists like him, and reading about how he's sneaking into the Situation Room, how his heart's pounding, how he plans on abducting the president right then and there. Oh, excuse me, in the Oval Office. How he plans on abducting the president right there in the Oval Office. He doesn't do it. He's clamming up. And then just when he has control of the White House, commanding his men, it's really creepy. The way he's talking and announcing his plans to the hostages. I feel like Vince does a lot of like thought process. Like he's one villain where we're inside his head a lot more than some of our later villains.
Right. So. No, I agree with you. I think he's the first rap villain we see. Very genius rap villain. And obviously this is someone that Mitch has had history with, someone who has escaped Mitch in the past. So It's like, even though we don't know what that past is, we get this first, who is this guy? I want to know more about Mitch's past. And obviously the end in the epilogue, seeing him get killed.
Yep.
Just a great way to kick off the series with this villain.
Yeah. I mean, you gave me that scar in the epilogue. It's like, what scar? When will we learn about it?
Right.
And Vince gives us that later on in his career. So it's classic.
Yes. So in the third option and Separation of Power, we have sort of this dual big bad trio, actually. So we have Peter Cameron and Hank Clark, who are the main, the political players in the third option. Also like the Jansons, but they're like Hank Clark is the one pulling the strings, as well as the professor.
Congressman Rudin.
Exactly. And then in Separation of Power, we also have Congressman Rudin, Hank Clark. They're the main, villains in that story.
Yeah.
I think this, we're going to discuss this more in depth in our B plot, but definitely one of the stronger political players. I like the character of Hank Clark. He's just described as this like swarmy car salesman, can lie his way through anything, doesn't look like a killer, but doesn't hesitate to kill anybody, friggin' throws Rudin out of the window in the
violence
Senate
at the Capitol building? That doesn't happen.
Never. So I don't know. I really like Hank Clark.
Yeah, Hank Clark is a fantastic crafting of that archetype of a villain. But I really love the pairing with Peter Cameron, because at the same time, you get someone who has experience in the intelligence business. He worked for the CIA, right? And he's a professor of national intelligence. Yet he's also a bumbling fool.
Yeah,
so
he's a fool.
I think by aligning Peter Cameron and Hank Clark, it kind of works. It's like a little, I don't know, peanut butter and jelly going on kind of combo. And Peter Cameron is like itching to get into the field.
Right.
The way Hank Clark is so good at what he does, you realize Peter Cameron is not. And that's going to be one of the main reasons their whole plans are spoiled, by someone as good as a Rapp and a Kennedy and Marcus tracking him down. But I love the character of that professor playing off of and with Hank Clark. Really good pairing to create a villain duo.
Right.
Yeah.
Our next villain that we meet is in Executive Power, where we have this Palestinian. What is he? Just like a Palestinian refugee or a Palestinian? I forget, but David. So
David, he had an interesting background, and that wasn't even his real name.
Yeah, it was like Gabriel, right, or Jabriel, and then also coupled with the head of Mossad, Ben Friedman, who we see him multiple times through a couple different books, and Irene obviously totally wipes the floor with him.
Yes,
but in this book, I think this is his strongest showing. Trying to develop this plot to get rid of. It makes it seem like David is trying to, help him get rid of Palestine, but they don't know that, or like these radicals in Palestine. The whole scene of like, they give him a bomb,
taking out the Hamas leadership,
and then he gets so greedy that he like sends in the Apache helicopter, right? Or like some like crazy war helicopter takes him out. In the end, both are foiled. And David's death was kind of disappointing, just like to be killed by this Prince Omar guy who then just gets killed by Rapp. But yeah, they were okay villains.
Ben Friedman gives me an okay, good character when you're reading it. Not too memorable. I feel like if we weren't doing this list, I would have kind of forgotten him. Even though he was in 2 books, played a major role, he's kind of like, meh. I don't think he's an Aziz or he's a Hank Clark.
No.
He's all right. That was a good villain. International version of like a Stansfield, right. A little younger. But yeah. Well, I think we get a really good one next. Memorial Day. We get these really creepy scenes of Mustafa al-Yamani commandeering a boat and entering U.S. waters and territory in Florida. The way he's coordinating shipping in the nuclear weapons and assembling them, and has this like ad hoc team, like he's hiring like college kids, with Saudi blood living in America to drive him around. And he's got a scientist and like experts who can assemble the bomb and do all this stuff. He's a pretty good villain, and he's really, really, he's radicalized. Some of the things you hear going through his mind about wanting to hit America and wanting to take down the great Satan, like al-Yamani really represents that archetype very well, I feel.
Well, that and the willingness that he's willing to go to make the attack, like he gives himself, he knows he's going to be exposed to radiation poisoning. He knows he's dying. He gives his everything to get these 2 nukes into the United States and almost succeeds.
Yeah.
Besides like total power, this is probably the closest the
nuke goes off.
Yeah. So this is definitely the closest that any one of the villains gets to like actually winning,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then at the end he just sort of laughs as Mitch kills him,
Yeah.
Because he knows that, well, he thinks he knows that he can't stop him, but Rapp is able to foil it a little bit, foil it. Obviously they
contain the blast.
A lot of damage, but don't get any deaths. So
exactly, no, they contain it in the bunker.
Very, very good villain. And then the whole
like al-Yamani,
the twist of
set
like
off
him,
a nuke.
Yeah, it set off a nuke on American soil, and this has ripple effects through the next 3 books with the politics in this realm. Achieved his goal of terrorism, of causing terror.
It's funny though. The causing terror is what actually gives Rapp the license, or dare I say it, the consent to start reorganizing the Orion team and really hitting these guys hard. So it's kind of cool that we immediately jump into consent to kill from there. And, the president, Hayes, is willing to let him loose. And so are the Walsh and Hartsburg on the Senate Intelligence Committee willing to let them loose, all because of Yamani and how extreme he was.
Yep.
Speaking of consent to kill, maybe we don't have to go too deep because we just covered the villains, but we get a whole crew of villains from Prince Mohammed bin Rashid, who is funding, the hit on Rapp in cahoots with Saeed. Again, another member of the royal family. So we have this kind of approach of the Saudi royal family and their palace intrigue, funding terrorism. And then we get the people on the ground actually doing the work. Abel is moving the money and hiring the assassin. We have Petrov, the guy this Russian he collaborates with. And ultimately we get introduced to a major villain, Louis Gould. So Consent to Kill has really given us a lot of good meat to chew on when it comes to villains.
And I think if, we're going to pick the best one or best 2 in a minute, but I think we can separate those into like the players and then Gould. Like Gould is his own the own villain, like the better villain in the story, and then you have everyone sort of like, I guess if like you had in
behind the scenes
you had Hank Clark and Peter Cameron, this is a better version of that,
Yeah. With Muhammad and Saeed and Abel.
And Abel, yeah.
Well, let's get into the recent ones. We had Saeed Halabi in Lethal Agent, again, who also shows up in one of the other books that we're going to cover here. But Halabi is, to me, kind of similar to an al-Yamani. He's just the ISIS version of that, the more modern, late 21st century version of it.
A lot of similarities between those two characters.
Yeah, Halabi and Al-Yamani of Al-Qaeda. And then most recently, we get Power Station, which I think you really liked as a villain and what he's doing there.
I liked him as a villain, but he also is like, now that I think about it and you talk about it, he's kind of Kyle's version of Peter Cameron, almost.
Yeah, that's very good.
It's like not in the intelligence sector, but in the cyber sector. I don't know. Like I like the story because the attack actually happens, and well, at least I hope. And Kyle mentioned that there is going to be consequences of like the amount of people that died and economic ramifications, or like maybe we don't know those specifically, but it's going to affect the political landscape in the next coming books. And so, I don't know. In the end, we talked about this recently or back in the summer on our Total Power Pod. Some of the plot mechanics with him are weak, but I don't know. I liked him as a villain.
Yeah. Well, I guess the last one we should cover, even though they're kind of non-rap villains, we had a really good cast of characters in Term Limits.
Right.
Stu Garrett, who was he the chief of staff? I think he was President Stevens' chief of staff. Stevens. Yeah. And then he had Mike Nance, who was, I believe, National Security Advisor.
Yeah, National Security Advisor. Yep.
National Security Advisor. And you get this guy Higgins, who was a ex-CIA guy from the intelligence, but he is running more of a private show. And so Stu Garrett coordinates with him. It's Stu Garrett, of course, being also both political, very Machiavellian as a political operator, but also manipulating the media and then getting in bed with these CIA and security and military guys like Nance and Higgins. And Stu Garrett just has his hands in everything. He's very weaselly. So he was a pretty good villain in that regard. All right. If you had to give it a superlative so we can get on, who wins?
Before we do that, kind of in that book, Scott's the villain, though.
That's true. Scott is a villain.
But you can sympathize with him. He's the good guy. But he's also the hero. Before you know who he is, he's the villain of the book.
Yeah. You know who makes the switch, though? Who, in our minds, plants that what Scott's doing can be useful is Thomas Stansfield.
Right.
By wanting to bring him in and say, you're really good. You're SEAL Team 6 commander. We could use you in the CIA to put your skills and your aggravations to work and make positive change for the country. So, yeah, he's a villain turned hero. It's really interesting start to our relationship with Coleman.
Yeah. All right, so if I had to pick the best villain, this is tough. I'm probably going Transfer of Power with Rafiq Aziz, and then my number 2 is Louis Gould. And I think that's also what Ryan, the rapologist, picked. He did this whole ranking, just the Vince Flynn books. But I'd have to agree and say that those two characters are really nice. And then I think a close third is from Memorial Day, Mustafa Al-Yamani.
Wow. So I'm surprised. I was going to say Aziz, I think he's a fantastic villain. But I think the role of villain is played better at large by Hank Clark.
You're right.
Not just being an extremist terrorist, same old storyline, but Hank Clark is a deeper kind of more complex villain. So for that complexity and being across a couple of different books, and knowing how important to Vince the political side of things are, which we often call the B plot, but Hank Clark has a hand, and he's masterminding all that. So I gotta say, Hank Clark has the edge as top villain here.
All right.
Best rap kill. What do you think?
Let's do it. Best rap kill. So we both pick 3. Why don't you say your 3 first? And
my 3 favorites.
And then I'll tell you my 3.
Okay. All right. Again, I'm high on nostalgia, and I keep bringing this up. The first time we ever see Rap is so memorable to me. He's in Bandar Abbas, southern Iran, near the Strait of Hormuz. He's undercover as an old man. He's wearing the jalaba and all the robes so he can blend in. We hear he's got the dark complexion, he's got the beard, he's got everything. And he's limping to look like an invalid old man. He walks right up to this guard, mumbling Arabic, and slices him. And in Transfer of Power, it says, quote, "The knife sliced deep into the neck of the guard, just under the jawline. Rapp cupped his left hand over the man's mouth and drove the knife upward into the back of the brain." To me, that's such a memorable kill. So I'm putting that up there on my top 3. Second, I got to go when he tortures Al-Harani in Memorial Day, because we're getting bits and pieces about a nuclear weapon. And Rapp was just on the ground in Afghanistan, pulling dudes out of a house and like finding plans that they're going to explode a nuclear device in Washington. And so when he has these guys in a barn in just bumblefuck Afghanistan and he lines them up, and I love how he rationalizes. He's looking at him. He's like, what do I do? Okay, this guy over here looks really seasoned and hardened. He's like a commander. He's going to take hours or days and weeks to break. I don't have time. So guess what? I'm going to make a show of killing him in front of all these other guys, these younger, weaker pussies, so that they can start talking. He puts a gun right up to Al-Harani's head and says, "Ali Saeed Al-Harani, your deeds have damned you to hell, and that is where I'm sending you." Knocks him off, and then continues to torture the other guys next to him. Just love that.
Great kill.
I might go with one. All right, I'm going to group these ones. I'm going to say the revenge kills in Consent to Kill.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
He pours the cognac.
One of mine are on there.
Yeah, he pours the cognac on a bell in the Alpine house and lights that up right after Scott Coleman was taking a few sips of it out of the bag. And then at the same time, he got the phosphorus grenade. Prince Mohammed bin Rashid in Granada, Spain, just shoving an incendiary down his throat. Love that.
All right. So I also had the Consent to Kill, Prince Mohammed bin Rashid, incendiary bomb. So I have a different Transfer of Power, although that scene is a great introduction into our character, Mitch Rapp. Like one of the best introductions of a character, I think. But I love the Rafiq Aziz kill at the end in the epilogue. I think, we fly down to he's in hiding, and the scene sort of, we were just in the White House, and then we cut, and Aziz thinks he's safe, but you're not safe when you're on the run from Mitch Rapp. I just love that kill. I wrote this down, and so I have the same as you, Prince Mohammed bin Rashid. Some honorable mentions before I say my last one. Power Station's kill at the very end. He, offers Jed to kill him, but instead, he kills him out in the middle, Idaho, wherever he is. The Prince Omar kill is one of the better parts of Executive Power at the very end, showing up in the limo. But I really like so my final one is in the very beginning, Rapp killing the Imam in Consent to Kill. And I guess the reason why I thought it's cool is because, I don't know, I think it's a very nice description of this hand-to-hand combat. We normally see Rapp killing with a gun. In this case, we see him slicing his, with a throat, slicing his throat with a knife, sorry. Yeah, and just the writing there is very technical, very cool. The whole description of it is, shows off Rapp as a spy, shows him off as this great fighter. So yeah, that's my top 3.
Nice. Before we pick, one we forgot was, and it's not exactly a Rapp kill, but Rapp had his hands in it all along. He and Donatella go out and pose as a couple at the Cosmos Club, the DC, right. Hoity-toity. And she is flirting with Senator Hank Clark, slips something from her lipstick, her false lipstick container, into his drink, sits him in a chair, and Rapp looks him in the eye and says, "Senator, you're having a heart attack." And Hank Clark is frozen. He can't move, and he dies right there staring at Rapp and Donatella walking off arm in arm. So
that's a great kill.
It is not exactly a typical Rapp kill, but very like spy, James Bondish kind of scene there.
Exactly.
All right.
What do you think the best is?
I'm going with the opening scene, transfer power, because once he kills that guard, he storms the building,
Right.
and they eventually exfil from the roof, using the infrared strobe so the chopper can come in, and all the locals are fully armed with their AKs coming out of their houses, shooting at him on the roof. So that guard kill is just an awesome opening to an opening scene. First time we see Rapp operating. So that's mine.
Maybe I'm a little biased because we just did Consent to Kill, but any of the revenge kills, but specifically Prince Muhammad bin Rashid. I think those 4 in succession are just quintessential Rapp. So that's mine.
I mean, even Wahid, he blows up with the suicide vest in Riyadh with the ball bearings going everywhere. That's pretty good stuff.
And Taib, another suicide bomb to get vest. It.
Yeah. So. I mean, Rapp. How are you going to say the best kill? Those are all awesome.
Can't go wrong.
Cool. All right, let's keep it moving. While we're on kills, best action scene overall. I feel like we've kind of gone through a few of these, but a couple that we haven't touched on yet. 2 helicopter scenes I'm thinking of. One is in Term Limits. Scott plants these devices to jam all the helicopter signals and communications all around strategic locations of DC. So he funnels the president's chopper and the shell game choppers around it into going over the Potomac River because he knows their emergency flight plans. And so he's jamming the signals. Then he sets off fireworks that he planted under the chain bridge, which causes, the whole caravan of choppers just go out of whack. And one guy breaks protocol, nearly knocks a chopper out of the air. And he was doing it all as a scare tactic. He was trying to threaten our own U.S. government officials into listening to his demands. So that scene was just wild.
Yeah, that's really good. And then, so the other helicopter scene you were talking about is in Memorial Day when they're above Afghanistan, right? That's where they pick up, or I guess they go into Pakistan, from Afghanistan into Pakistan, and that's where they pick up the guys, where they begin to get this information about, oh shit, there's a nuke in the United States. And then I guess it's also a helicopter scene at the end where this whole chasing the boat and getting the bomb and then taking it to the whole progression at the very end of the book, I think is just great. So yeah, those 2 helicopter scenes come to mind. We mentioned the revenge kills in Consent to Kill. I think those are some really good action scenes there, but also in Consent to Kill, we have the whole, the MS-13 hit on the safe house, and then Rapp's clinically kill. We should have put that on best Rapp kills, but they're all no names. So
exactly.
I felt, but it's pretty badass the way he just mows, counts in his head all the kills.
Yep. And he's doing it with one handgun. Was it a Glock or Beretta that Scott gave him?
I think give him a Glock, right?
I think it was with a Glock at that point. He started off with a Beretta in the first few books. That was his weapon of choice.
Now he's doing
We now see him using the Glock much more often, yeah.
Gotta go American, man.
Yeah, that's totally one of the best action scenes ever. But just a few others to bring up. We have Separation of Power was pretty sweet, where we get intel that Saddam Hussein's son, Uday, is overseeing an operation in Iraq to arm nuclear weapons, and they're hidden underneath a hospital in a bunker. So pretty cool action scene where they fly in undercover, they drop off a convoy out of these C-130 transports, and that convoy is to a T impersonating Uday Hussein, the son of Saddam Hussein. And Rapp, people have told him his whole life he kind of looks like him. Well, Rapp put on the whole bit. Uniform, insignia, he knew his slogans, how he talks, his accent, and takes his convoy right past the guards up to the hospital and extracts the nukes out of those bunkers. So that was a pretty cool action scene all in all. And they were undercover, so we see a lot of good spycraft there too.
Yes. Speaking of spycraft, the third option, which I think is, we see a lot of good spycraft, but we don't get a lot of action in that novel. A couple sort of spy-y, like I mentioned before, that book reminds me of Jason Bourne and the Bourne Identity. But the one scene we do get is the very beginning where they're storming into the German to take out the Chancellor. And then he gets shot by the Jansons. And then we get this whole proceeding of like he wakes up, that yada yada yada.
Yep.
I really like that scene.
Oh, and he burns the house.
Then he burns
so there's
the
no
house
evidence
down.
of his blood.
Yes,
yeah.
Very smart
That's
thinking.
right.
Yes, yeah. And then I guess the other way we haven't mentioned is in Lethal Agent and Total Power. So in Lethal Agent, we have the whole Mexico chase scene at the very end. I like the pacing at the end of that book where, they're trying to chase down the van or truck, right, with, the tainted people. And then they have the government coming after them because they're not supposed to be there. And then they finally get the thing and then they get the van and then Rapp has to like take it across the border. He's being shot at. And I don't know. That was just crazy.
That was good stuff too. How everyone's helping him on this chase. Like,
right.
doesn't
he gets like
Maslick,
all these like
Maslick, I think rams a couple of police barricades, like Mexican Federale barricades, to let him through in this 18-wheeler, just racing for the U.S. border. That was pretty wild.
Yeah, and they call in like all of these like retired CIA people to help them track and find this van and
the pilot. That pilot who has been around.
His pilot.
I forget his name, but they call in that pilot who comes with like a half-broken chopper.
Or Fred. It might be
Fred. Yeah. He's giving him air support.
Fred Mason. That's his name.
Fred Mason. That's right. Who's also in Total Power.
Yes.
But those are some pretty good scenes. The only other one that comes to mind, I would say Operating in the Filipino Jungle. I really liked Executive Power. Unfortunately, it didn't carry much weight in the rest of the book. But the first half of Executive Power, Coleman and Wicker trying to rendezvous with Rapp, who's watching this village because he went in earlier or prior.
Right.
So they meet up, and then they have this plan to. Rapp actually goes in to meet with the commanding general on the ground, who's working with Abu Sayyaf, the terrorist group. But Scott and Wicker are watching from afar. I thought that was pretty cool stuff.
Oh, I guess also from that book, the explosion on the Hamas
Hamas leadership,
where like David comes in, and then
and Ben Friedman fired on him,
yeah.
And then lied to Irene.
Exactly.
Told Irene he knew nothing about it. Yeah.
And Total Power is interesting. The only thing that I could really think of is when Rapp has to. Well, I guess there's all the chasing, try to find Total Power in the end. But the coolest action scene, I think, is when he gets let off with I think Fred probably takes him in with into DC to find Sonya, and then he has to, everyone's looting. He has to, find her and make his way through all these crazy people. I don't know. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Remember when he's extracting Sonya and he's about to board the chopper and Scott's hiding in the shadows and he hears someone shooting at him from behind without even looking. He just goes, Scott. And then Scott from the shadows takes that guy out. And Sonya's kind of impressed with it all. Like, who's this blonde man who just did that?
Yeah. Sadly, we won't see Sonya anymore, so that kind of sucks.
Well, not yet. What do you think this is action? I mean, it wasn't action in the sense of Rapp's doing crazy shit, but I liked him and Milt Adams sneaking through the ducts of the White House. A lot of it was like surveillance and listening in, and he was
and like at that stealthily taking out people, like going out and then going back into that room.
And then like the rape scene where Anna was almost abducted and he jumped out of the secret closet.
Chokes the guy out.
Yeah. I don't know if you call all that action, but like that's pretty cool scenes of Rapp doing Rapp things.
Yeah. And you could also say the ending of that book, the explosion of the White House, the takedown, all that stuff. Yeah.
With HRT, FBI's HRT.
Yes.
All right. If you had to pick, though, top action scene we covered so far, what is it?
This is tough. I think I'd have to go the ending of Memorial Day. Yes. I think the pacing of that.
Yes.
The tracking.
The stakes.
The stakes of it. It hits. And then like both of us are from, or you're not from the DC area, but I'm from the DC area. You've lived in the DC area a long time. And we know these locations. They're so vivid the way they're described. Even if you've never been here, you could like sort of see this thing playing out in this park. And I don't know. It's got to be the end of Memorial Day for me.
Yep, I'm with you. Rap, it even starts earlier when they're tracking the nuke through southeastern Virginia, and they're just going through suburbs, right? The action kind of picks up there. They kill a cop, actually, right? One of the guys hits a cop, and that makes the local news. And then from there on out to Rap literally with minutes to spare, putting this thing in the bunker underneath a mountain and getting out of there in a chopper. That whole scene just, to me, might be my favorite of all Vince Flynn in terms of action. The epilogue of Consent to Kill. You heard me last week gush over that. Might be my favorite writing, but favorite action is definitely that sequence.
I mean, it's our favorite book, so.
Well, so far, yeah.
So far.
Probably overall also, yeah. I don't think American Assassin for me is going to knock off Memorial Day top spot.
It might. I haven't reread it in a long
time. Yeah, I haven't reread it in probably a couple of years, so
we'll see.
All
right, well, let's hit two of these real quick. Best location. What do you think so far out of all the locations? What do you think? What have you enjoyed reading the most about?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot already, so maybe we just jump right in and say the favorite.
Yes, fine.
Well, maybe just one we didn't talk about yet really was Milan. And that's when the writing in Separation of Power is getting a bit bogged down in the love triangle.
Yes.
The Anna, Donatella, Mitch love triangle. But just the scene in Milan of, shopping at the Duomo while Anna's out and Rap is going to meet Donatella and then hitting these guys in the apartment. And there's a spook sitting in a car outside that he hears say something in Hebrew. So pretty cool scene described there. We talked about the Filipino jungle. I'm just going with the DMV, the District, Maryland, Virginia circle, Beltway. I love whether it's term limits or transfer of power or the end of Memorial Day, I love when he's describing this neighborhood and these areas with such great detail. I love actually thinking, oh, you make a left turn on 16th Street headed north. Right. When you get to Rock Creek Park, the entrance is on your left, and just whatever. Like, I'm just a sucker for that, so I'm going DMV.
All right, that's you stole mine.
Yeah.
If I had to pick something different, I'm a sucker for Europe. So the time we get it's a little bit, but the time we get in the third option of him being in Germany and then crossing over to France, right? And
yes.
And also Milan, just the description there. I love, I've been to these places. I've never been to Germany, but I've been to, France and Italy. And so, yeah, it's definitely DMV, but you're going to say it, right? Like
I was going to say, you're chomping at the bit for Kill Shot then.
Yeah, that's going to be my favorite location. I can just already say it now. Like, I love Paris so much. So
okay. I don't remember you spending much time there. Was that?
I spent a week there on my honeymoon, and I just fell in love
that was
with
your
it.
honeymoon. Okay,
yeah,
nice.
Yeah, I loved it. I need to go back.
I like that. For doing something different though, Lethal Agent, the Mexico scenes. I that actually would probably be my close second. I just thought Kyle nailed it. With you have a chase through the jungle. Remember the dogs are hopped up on cocaine,
right?
And Rap kills these guys and wears their uniforms and whatever, and then goes into the house, the house of what do you call it? The drug lord, one of the kingpins that he's working with. Orders breakfast from his maid.
Oh yeah, he takes like the bone and I guess that would have been a good kill. Like killing the one dude, poking him with a stick.
In the cage.
Poking him with a stick.
Oh snap!
Why didn't we think of that? Poking him with a stick, only to use his femur to unlock him. Like,
and then he makes a lockpick out of his bone.
That might be the best kill, actually.
That might. I think that just jumps up on our best kill list. And I mean, that's Kyle too. So we've only read 2 Kyle books, and I think Lethal Agent might have the coolest kill. Oh, man, I'm glad you remembered that.
I totally forgot about that.
People would be at their keyboards listening to this episode like, Lethal Agent, the cage in Mexico. Femur, lockpick, bone.
That's funny.
All right, I'm glad you brought that up. Yep, that's jumping right to the top.
All right, so
let's do the B-plots.
Yes,
Vince, it was really important to him, the political scenes. That's a hallmark of a rap novel. whether, it's a congressional hearing and Rapp is in his mind just mouthing off at all these people, or Irene's on the hot seat. What worked for you as one of the best storylines in Washington, D.C.?
So we've already mentioned Hank Clark and Congressman Rudin. So some other B plots that we had, obviously we think both that's one of the the best B plots that we've seen. Lethal Agent, I think we had a really good one. Christine Barnett and her little minion, Jonathan Gray. Term Limits, Stu Garrett, Arthur Higgins, and Mike Nance. And we actually see Stu Garrett come back in the book we're going to do this month. So yeah, I like the trio there. I the Stu Garrett character is just so annoying.
Yeah, he's a pest.
Makes you want to hate him. And,
he's a pest.
And then in Consent to Kill, we had the new
director, DNI, Ross, Director of National Intelligence, Ross.
Yeah, Ross.
Yeah.
So,
and he's working with Stokes. Attorney General Stokes in Memorial Day. Yeah. You know what's interesting?
And Peggy Steele.
Peggy Steele, yeah, who works for Stokes. I feel like that was the weakest part of Memorial Day.
That was
the B plot of Peggy Steele and Attorney General Stokes trying to position for VP. If you replace, can you imagine if either Hank Clark or Stu Garrett were the political B plot of Memorial Day? I might say that's a perfect thriller. I honestly might say I would have given a perfect 10 to Memorial Day if either Hank Clark or Stu Garrett was the political B plot instead of the Stokes Steele business. That was the only eye roll moment of Memorial Day for me, was Peggy Steele and Stokes weren't doing it for me. How they want to be on the ticket for VP or something. It wasn't much.
Yeah, I think it's got to be Hank Clark or Stu Garrett are the best political scumbags we hate.
Yep. All right, well, two things we've talked about throughout our episodes we kind of want to pull to a close here and wrap up with our favorite titles so far. And then, it's the last thing we do on these episodes, our favorite cover. So overall, it's going to be hard. We'll have to pick one. But let's start with titles. What do you like?
So we did a short actual wrap on this. And I'm sticking with what I said. I think Lethal Agent is the best title. It's the perfect double meaning, double entendre, right? Rapp is a lethal agent. He gets taken out by this lethal agent virus. I don't know.
It's brilliant.
It's brilliant. If I had to pick a second one, I think Consent to Kill is great because they use it a couple times throughout the novel, and 3 or 4 times, right? We talked about it last pod. Whether or not the title came out of the writing, or they had the title and they purposely used it in the writing, I think it works either way.
Yeah.
And Total Power, I like they really both Kyle titles. I think great. The fact that Power Station has the total power, and this is the first novel where the attack actually happens and there are consequences. So, those are my top 3, and Lethal Agent being my top.
Yeah, I'm concurring on Lethal Agent. So creative. It's just brilliant. Everything you said, leaving in the top spot. Consent to Kill, agree with you. I liked how it was used multiple times and had a really big impact on what was going on in the story. Mitch getting consent to kill, both because the terrorist came really close to blowing up Washington. So he had consent to do what he needs there, but also consent to kill as a revenge story. You're giving yourself the consent to kill because of what they did to you.
Right.
So great title. The one you didn't bring up that I would add to the list, a Transfer of Power. It's on the nose, right? You kidnap the president, right? Transfer of power. But remember how much fun we had digging into the 25th Amendment?
True.
So the writing around, was the transfer of power complete? Did the vice president have the authority to command the nation? I thought those questions were addressed in a constitutional way, very, not just, oh, terrorists take the White House, sure, but it was a little bit deeper. So
true. I guess you could say the same about term limits, where he doesn't actually use the word term limits in the novel, but Scott, the villain, is imposing his own term limits on these senators that he doesn't think should be there. So that's a good one. But the other ones,
but it could also be a solution. How we talk to the lobbying group that wants congressional term limits, and how, like, instead of using violence, actual legislated term limits and limits on leadership and preventing careerist politicians in Washington is a smart idea, which could address a lot of the issues Scott writes about in his ransom letter in term limits. Sure, it means two different things, but it also could have a real world application to unlock Washington.
What was the original title of that book again? We found it.
Stand Up for Your Rights.
Term limits way better.
Okay, I'm going with that's the biggest save of Vince's career, that you almost went with Stand Up for Your Rights, and somehow it must have been a miracle. Term limits came to you, or your publisher, or whoever it was, or his. No, that was self-published. So
self-published. So,
or maybe an editor. Maybe he had an editor who worked with him on that one. But
yeah. So, anyways,
great save. Our cover time. It's cover time. Right. You like the power lines, right, Chris?
You know I'm going to pick a power line one.
All right. I'm actually going to be serious here. Which is your favorite cover?
Power line one.
Which is your favorite power line cover? I'm not kidding either. Let's waste the listeners' time.
Let's waste their time. Honestly,
it's not like we did enough of that today.
It's probably. Ooh. It's gotta be Separation of Power.
Let's see.
Because in this one, there's a train with power lines and a cloaked figure walking next to a train. And I don't even think this book takes place during the winter. Like, it might. I forget. But, like, the making the train front and center makes you think that there's going to be, at least with the other ones, he's just in a field, like... Mm-hmm. Or walking down a road. Like, you could conceivably think of, like, a scene from anywhere where Rapp might be in this location. But that one, that's so specific, putting him next to a train. Putting him next to a train. Are you kidding me? There's no train scene. That would be a better third option. That would be a better third option cover than Separation of Power. No, because I think he tries... Yeah. He tries to get on a train, then he doubles back or something like that.
That's true. Dude, I gotta go on Memorial Day. Memorial Day. The dude is standing there with barbed wire in an open field and a duffel bag.
No,
let's move on.
With that one, he could be interrogating someone.
No, that's the farm. That's no, they're in Leesburg, Virginia.
At the facility. The facility, not the farm. The facility.
I don't know. Just like literally, this looks like a story. This looks like a 70s crime drama of a guy in like central Iowa who's about to get picked up by some random like trucker. It just has nothing to do. All right, I can't spend any more time on this.
Anyways,
all right, seriously though, your favorite overall cover of the first 9 books that we've covered on the pod?
Oh man, this is tough.
I think I know mine.
All right, I got to give love to Consent to Kill, the flag option,
the classic.
The classic. I really like the Separation of Power. On our power rankings, it was the B option where you have this. I'm guessing it's Clark looking out his office window in Congress. Memorial Day with the broken CIA seal. Mm-hmm. Oh,
you haven't gotten mine yet. Although Memorial Day is definitely my runner-up. I've talked about it quite a bit. What that book means to me, and that cover A, that blue, the light blue. I love it.
I don't think I liked it at the time we did the pod, but it's growing on me. The term limits with the crosshairs.
Yep, on the Capitol building.
On the Capitol building. Either
That's
edition.
mine.
Either one.
Yeah.
But
I think the first edition is the one with black, mostly black, if I'm not mistaken, and the second edition is the one in blue. I might have that backwards, but that's mine, dude. I'm going with term limits. It's got the Capitol building is like in green, like a shade of green, like almost as if you are looking down the scope, right, with the crosshairs right on it. And it's ominous. It's foreboding. It's a little too close to home as well, but it tells the story. Like, that cover tells the story of the book, and you wouldn't even know it, like, at first. So right. I love it.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
All right, what are you going with? Is it Consent to Kill?
Am I just gonna do Consent to Kill?
It's a great one.
I guess I have to. No, I'm gonna go Memorial Day.
Really?
I like the tearing across of the CIA seal. I really like that one.
I think that's a good move because while the American flag Consent to Kill cover is classic, it doesn't have an edge where the seal tearing like that, and it's like a metallic, very like rough seal with a lot of those little edges. It gives it a little, it's a little sharper. It gives you something.
Right.
The Consent to Kill one is just the flag. The shadowing on the flag is really nice, but
yeah, it's got to be mine.
All right. I'm sticking with term limits, man. Those crosshairs on the Capitol.
All right. Well, that's good.
Although I'm not associated in any way with the people who stormed the building. And so just want to clear ourselves for the FBI. I like the cover of a book. It does not indicate any culpability of recent events.
Disclaimer.
Although the book is about picking off congressmen and sniping them, but that's another story. You can go back to episode 2 for that. FBI. Scott Coleman.
He's the guy you should be looking for.
Yes. He's blonde.
Blue-haired, blue-eyed. Oh, that was a good pod.
That was fun.
Really enjoyed talking to you today, Martini, about some of the superlatives, as well as our book rankings. We hold the right to change our rankings at any time, so
they will be fluid. They are fluid.
They are very fluid. So, anyways,
it depends on the moments, how you're feeling, right? Like sometimes I'm just in the mood for one book, and that's where I'm at right there. So it depends on the mood.
Also, I think like as we on reread, I remember things way more, and we're reading them like it'll be a year and a half when we complete the whole series in this like in depth. So I think as opposed to like when I listen to them, just on my own. So
that's why though I really bumped up Term Limits and Transfer of Power today, because those are books where it sticks with you. So there is something to 6 months later, 8 months later, scenes and storylines sticking with you in a powerful way versus your Executive Power or
like even we just reread that
Power.
book. We just reread that book, and before this pod, we both were like, "What happened there?"
Kind of blanked on it. Yeah. So that's why it's also fluid, because what sticks over time shows that book had more of an impact, and I'm going to move it up for that.
Right.
Cool.
Well, again, we need to thank our patrons, including our special operator, Sherry F., along with our special agents, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, and Jeff. Please, 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 can't say this enough. Subscribe, rate, review us using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us online at MitchRappPod.com. Check out our Teespring website, as well as if you want to become a patron, hit that little orange button. And we're also on Twitter and Instagram at MitchRappPod. And no, that's it. And as always, just let Mitch be Mitch. Just a disclaimer, this podcast is not affiliated with Vince Flynn, Kyle Mills, or Simon & Schuster, but thank you to them for bringing us the wonderful world of rap. And the music soundtrack is Guerrilla Tactics by Raphael Crooks.